And it certainly sounds more fun too. When I think about extreme saving, it's like, ooh, counting every penny and spending the time at the grocery store to compare like dollar for dollar, where does my dollar go further? Oh, that is not the style for me. So I love what you're talking about with entrepreneurship and real estate. That's certainly what Julie and I have seen as the FIRE accelerators in our lives as well. And so for both of those things, though, for real estate, which can be hard to get into, and entrepreneurship, which can be a huge risk for people to leave a stable job and to start a side hustle or to start their own business, tell us a little bit about the mindset side of things. How do people get to that space where they can take that leap? Are there smaller steps they can take beforehand, or what do you recommend?
I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I think I really encourage people to start at that place first, because mindset really controls and dictates everything else. Because, what we believe ultimately will lead to the actions that we take. And of course, those actions are going to give us the results that we want or don't want. So I really tell people, take a look at that first, because we all grow up in different circumstances. And for myself, I was lucky, right? I had these rich uncles, but the majority of people do not have that benefit. So in order to be able to shift your mindset, you need to be very cognizant of what's possible. And I think a lot of that shift comes from educating yourself, listening to podcasts like Life and Money Show, and really being able to expose yourself to different ideas, right? Because as soon as you realize, you know what, there's another possibility, something triggers in our brain and says, you know what, I can have more, I can do more. And then all of a sudden we take action. And so I think that's where I really like people to start. And inside of F.I.R.E Planner, there's actually a whole section where you can really jump in and literally get some of those thoughts on paper. Really identify what are those limiting beliefs that are keeping us from taking the action and getting the results that we want today.
So I'm curious. I wanted to ask you I don't know, maybe we talked about this last time, but if somebody was to ask you, Michael, what's your why? Like, all sounds great, like mindset, we take action, inspiring stories, but what's your why? Like, why did you start doing this? Why did you write the book? Like, tell us, what is that? Because I think sometimes people aren't sure what their why is, and sometimes when they hear other people's whys, they get inspired. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So now I've mentioned to you guys a couple of times, I had these two rich uncles. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that one of them was a dentist, and he basically retired right around 38 or so. He had to practice himself, and then he bought a bunch of real estate, and then he was very interactive with his kids. The other uncle, which actually was his brother, he actually was very successful with entrepreneurship and was, earning millions of dollars by the time he was in his young 20s. Now, the two different uncles took very different trajectories in their life, and the way and the quality of their life was significantly different. With that said, I also saw some of the negatives that came into their lives depending on the money that they had. And what I noticed was that the dentist, the one that I noticed was, really interacting with his family and just being present. He always had a smile on his face. And this other uncle that was earning hundreds of millions of dollars was always going. He was always driving, very driven, excellent businessman. But I didn't ever see that smile. And so I found that curious, very curious. Other details, you see things in the media and whatnot. He kind of went down that path, right? Family fell apart, missteps here and there. And what I realized, I think, in that, just seeing those two dichotomies, was that we have a choice, right? At a certain point, I realized, you know what? Money is just a tool. And so we get to choose whether it's good or bad. And so because I saw that, I said, you know what? I'm going to emulate the uncle that basically was present with his family. And when I basically pulled the trigger, I sold the company, I put some of that money into real estate, started creating some of that passive income. And I had that unique opportunity to stay home with my kids. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this. And so that became really my why, is to be fully present, because I always realized, at the end of my life, when I'm sitting on my deathbed, hopefully I can get there. Maybe I don't. Who knows? You might get hit by a bus. But if I'm sitting, at my deathbed, I want to look back, and the money's not going to matter anymore, right? You can't take the money with you. But what's going to matter is the relationships and the treasure memories that you've built up over time and the impact that you've created in life. And so I try to reverse engineer that and use that as my why now to drive me and propel me forward. And what's very interesting is once you get enough to satisfy your basic needs, and I know for both of you, you're the same way because your whole company is built on this. Once you have those basic needs fulfilled, then it's about creating impact and helping other people. And when you do that, I mean, that's really the driver, right? That gives you a why, because a lot of times we're willing to do even more for other people than we are even for ourselves. So that's really where that why came from. And then finally, before my kids were even born, a few years before that, my mom passed early from lung cancer. She never smoked a day in her life, but we were kind of caught off guard. And, we had a couple months before, she was gone. And so I think when you have someone that's really close to you that passes away, throughout life, it just gives you that perspective, right? What's really important? The money or the interactions, relationships? And I realized, what? Use the money as a tool so that you can have the freedom to do what you want and to be able to serve in a capacity, to your God-given talents. That's what it's all about. So that's my why.